At 5:17 in the morning, the building was still dark except for one light on the third floor. The elevator doors opened, and a man stepped out carrying a cardboard box and a quiet kind of panic. He had spent years being the person everyone could reach. He answered messages fast. He said yes when he was tired. He fixed problems that were not his. He made himself easy to call, easy to borrow, easy to count on. And slowly, without noticing it, he became easy to overlook. That morning, he sat in an empty office and stared at a desk that had already been reassigned to someone else. No argument, no dramatic goodbye, just a quiet replacement. That is how a lot of people lose themselves. Not in one big collapse, but in 1,000 small moments where they keep making themselves available to everyone else and valuable to almost no one. Maybe you have felt that. Maybe you have been the one who always picks up, always helps, always shows up, always bends. And then one day you look up and realize the people around you know how to use your time, your energy, your kindness, your presence, but they do not know how to honor it. That is a painful place to live. It makes you start questioning your worth when the truth is often simpler and harder. You taught the world to treat you like access instead of substance. That is the first trap. We confuse being needed with being valued. We confuse being busy with being important. We confuse being available with being respected. A young apprentice once asked an old craftsman why his work was always in demand. The craftsman did not answer right away. He picked up a dull tool, held it in his hand, and said, "A tool that is always used but never sharpened eventually becomes the thing everyone expects to work, even when it can't." Then he handed the apprentice the tool and asked him to cut through a board. It failed, not because the tool was useless, but because it had been worn down by constant use and no care. A life can become like that too. Always in motion, always useful, slowly losing its edge. Think about your own life for a moment. How many times have you said yes because you were afraid of disappointing people? How many times have you answered a call, taken on a task, stayed late, fixed the mess, tolerated the disrespect, and told yourself that this was just being a good person? There is a difference between generosity and self-erasure. One gives from strength, the other gives until there is nothing left. The struggle begins there, because once you have spent too long making yourself available, silence starts to feel like guilt, boundaries start to feel like selfishness, and saying no starts to feel like losing something you may never get back. But the deeper loss was happening long before that. Every time you made yourself endlessly accessible, you trained people to skip the question of whether you were actually worth their attention. They did not have to earn it, they only had to expect it. That is when the shift begins, not when life gets easier, but when you become honest about what your time is costing you. There is a story often told about a master gardener who was asked why one tree in his orchard produced fruit year after year, while another, equally planted and equally watered, stayed thin and weak. He knelt beside the soil and said, "Because one tree is reached only when it is ready, and the other is touched every day until it forgets it was meant to grow." The lesson was not about being distant for the sake of distance. It was about honoring the conditions that create life. Growth does not happen in a life that is constantly interrupted. Maybe that is what you have been missing. You thought your problem was that people were not valuing you enough, when part of the problem was that you were making yourself too easy to consume. You were available at all hours, responsive at all times, agreeable under pressure, and present without being present. Your body was there, but your standards were not. Your time was there, but your direction was not. Your energy was there, but your purpose was not protected. And once you see that, everything changes, because being valuable is different from being available. Available means anyone can reach you. Valuable means your presence carries weight. Available means you can be interrupted anytime. Valuable means you are intentional about where you place yourself. Available means you answer every request. Valuable means you know which requests deserve you. Available is about access. Valuable is about contribution. At first, that understanding can feel uncomfortable. It can feel like you are becoming cold. It can feel like you are stepping back from people who once had easy entry into your life. But what you are actually doing is stepping forward into integrity. You are refusing to trade your future for someone else's convenience. Maybe you have known someone like that. Not the loudest person in the room, not the one begging for attention, the one whose words carried weight because they did not waste them, the one who did not over-explain, the one who was not always present, but when they were, something improved. The room got clearer, the work got better, the conversation got honest. People listened because that person had built a life that was not scattered all over the place. That is what happens when a human being stops trying to be everywhere and starts trying to be effective. The transformation is not instant. It starts small. You stop replying immediately to everything, and the world does not fall apart. You stop accepting every invitation, and your peace grows back. You stop volunteering for every rescue mission, and suddenly you have energy for the work that matters. You stop explaining every boundary, and you discover that the right people do not need a speech to respect you. They simply do. This is where many people panic, because the fear underneath constant availability is often fear of being forgotten. If I do not answer right away, they may move on. If I do not help, they may think less of me. If I do not show up for everything, they may stop inviting me. But ask yourself a harder question. If your role in someone's life disappears the moment you stop making yourself convenient, was that connection ever built on something real? That question stings because it forces the truth into the light. A life built on value does not beg to be seen. It becomes visible through depth, consistency, and results. Think of the people who changed your life. Was it because they were always around, or because they were present when it mattered? Was it because they made themselves endlessly accessible, or because they carried something true when they arrived? Most often, the people we remember are not the most available. They are the ones who brought clarity, courage, skill, honesty, or care. They were not background noise. They were substance. And substance requires discipline. You cannot become valuable while living as if your time has no price, your attention has no direction, and your energy has no limit. You have to choose. You have to filter. You have to protect the hours where your mind is sharpest and your heart is strongest. You have to be willing to disappoint the wrong people in order to stay loyal to the right future. Think about your own life again. Where are you still saying yes when your soul is saying no? Where are you still trying to be enough for everyone when being enough for everyone is exactly what is making you less effective for yourself? There is a quiet revolution that begins the moment you stop volunteering your life to every passing demand. Then something beautiful happens. You become calmer, not because life gets lighter, but because you stop carrying what was never yours. You become more trusted, not less, because your yes starts meaning something. You become more respected, not less, because people can feel the difference between someone who is always open and someone who is deliberately present. You become harder to misuse and easier to value. There is a reason some leaders, teachers, builders, and healers leave such a deep mark. It is not because they were available to everyone at every moment. It is because when they chose to show up, they brought something rare. They had cultivated depth. They had protected their attention. They had learned that a life spread thin becomes hard to trust, but a life gathered with purpose becomes impossible to ignore. That is the hidden cost of endless availability. It makes you common in places where you were meant to be exceptional. And that brings us to the revelation. The world does not reward the person who is easiest to reach. It rewards the person who has become worth reaching. That does not mean hiding. It does not mean becoming unkind. It does not mean putting on a mask and acting untouchable. It means living in such a way that your exceptional will only be masked considered whole. Presence carries meaning. It means being careful with your time because your time is part of your value. It means treating your focus like a gift, not a leftover. It means understanding that people learn how to treat you by how you treat yourself. A man I once heard about used to keep a chair in his office that no one was allowed to sit in, not because he was arrogant, but because that chair represented the hours he protected for deep work. People thought it was strange at first. Then they noticed something. When he was available, he was fully available. When he spoke, he had done the thinking. When he promised, he delivered. He was not always around, but he was dependable in the truest sense. People stopped asking him for every small thing and started bringing him the things that mattered. They trusted the weight of his attention. That is the life. Not a life that is constantly on call. A life that is carefully chosen. A life where your yes is clean because your no is honest. A life where your kindness does not become permission. A life where your presence is not cheapened by overexposure. A life that is valuable because it is built, guarded, and offered with intention. So let the title settle in now. Be valuable, not available. Not because availability is bad, but because availability without value is a trap, and value without boundaries gets consumed. Be the kind of person whose presence changes the room. Be the kind of person whose time means something. Be the kind of person who is not everywhere, but is unforgettable where it counts. And here is the challenge I want to leave with you. Before the day ends, choose one place where you have been too available and make yourself more valuable there instead.